I'm your host, Janisha Johnson, aka the Georgian Historian. Let's go hunting heritage. For today's episode, I'm going to be telling you all how hunting heritage started. So about 4 years ago, when I was 17, my dad and I were coming back from a trip to see my Uncle Frank, my dad's older brother, in South Carolina. And we had almost gotten back home, and home for us is Albany, Georgia. I asked, "Hey Dad, Daddy, you never taken me to see where you and my Uncle Frank grew up." And he said, "You want to go out there?" And I said, "Yeah." Like right after this 5-hour drive, as we're going there, it turns to dirt at some point, and it just felt like we were going back in time. I had never ridden on a dirt road before, so it was just really mesmerizing. And like there were thick trees, I think there were pine trees that lined the side of the road. We turned off Forester. There's a house. It's this brown wooden shack, as my daddy would call it. And he pointed it out and he said, "Yeah, that's the house that I was born in and grew up in for a while." He described it. It was one room, a kitchen, and an outhouse. No electricity. I was stunned that is the economic conditions that my dad was born into, because you would never guess, looking at me being valedictorian, always has been at the top of her class, from outsiders telling me that, "Hey, you must be rich or something. What do your parents do, you know?" So, and then that's the kind of beginnings that my dad has. And so back to the story. I instantly felt connected to the land, and I knew that the place was special. After that, we got back. We took pictures first, and we got back in the car, and I distinctly remember my dad telling me, "Come on, let's get in the car and go before these white people come out here, because there are white people out there now." And he said, "Come on here, let's go before these white people come out here and shoot us." It's like, oh my gosh, okay, Daddy. We back out of the dirt road that the house was on. And so we back out and we get back on the main dirt road. And now, at this point, my dad was in storytelling mode. And I love when that happens. He was just telling me how it was so fun. They thought it was so fun when they were kids. So we're driving further down, and I see these big mansions on either side of the road now. And just to hear my dad was telling me how none of these houses were out here, and it was so quiet and peaceful when we were out there. It was saddening. But we ended that day off picking wild blackberries on the side of the road. And they were so big and they were so juicy. And I remember I placed the palm of my hand on the dirt before we left and went back to the city of Albany. And I said, "This place is magical." No cap. honestly, I know it's such a poety thing to do, but I really feel like the place was magical. And from there, I wanted to know everything about the kind of people who live there, my relatives, and I just thought that my relatives, the people who lived out there, had to be so cool and so strong, and so that sparked my 4-year journey to this series, Hunting Heritage. And as we get further into the series, each episode, I will break down every find, every relative that I found, and how that happened, and all the information that I've gathered so far, which has been a lot. As I'm filming this today, the people who own the land called me and they said, hey, I would love to give you permission to go out there. So yeah, that was the big news. But I want to give it all away because I have so many great episodes planned. And now that you've heard how this started, let's look at my dad, my Uncle Frank, and his wife, Wanda, as they give more background information about Terrell County and how it was living out there.
I got that. It was thick. It was super thick. It was like
yeah, of course, yeah. Actually, farmland.
Yep.
Yeah. Because we know when we came along, it was the late 50s, early 60s time frame. So, they had got away from so much of the farmland and planted pine trees. But it was a very, very, very swampy and trees everywhere. About nature, put it that way. We are at one with nature when we are at home in Terrell County because we were surrounded by nature. We had cows, pigs, chickens. So the life was decent. Oh yeah. We hunted, and believe it or not, we only ate what we kill. We just didn't kill for fun. And you learn that kind of stuff. We even didn't even kill snakes for just the fun of it. And the poisonous snakes, you got to learn those. I guess in a lot of ways, I never got bit. So I guess we was looking that way because some of the places we went, if you saw that, you would be like, oh my goodness, you didn't go there. But yes, we did go there. But it was a good living. And it's easy to live like that when you don't know anything else. So we didn't know anything else. Every now and then we would go to the city.
Explain to her about that mudding.
What?
Mudding the pond.
Mudding the pond?
Yeah, well, you have to use some visualization in this. Imagine a pond that is in its prime, is full of water, is deep, fish running around in it. But during the dry season, the pond kind of like collapse in on itself and leave a puddle about 15
The beavers did it.
The who?
The beavers cut it off. You remember them beavers? They would cut the damn trees down and stop the water flow, and then it isolate the pond.
Yeah, that's true. But the pond is small now, so you can wade it. You can wade into it. And what generations and generations before us did and trained and our parents and our grandparents and their grandparents and so on and so on, you would take a 5-gallon bucket, cut the bottom out of it, and then you will go around and set the 5-gallon bucket in the water real quick. And then when you set it, you stick your hand in it and feel around 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a fish in that bucket because the fish is so plentiful and they have nowhere to go. You got them caged in, so you just set an open-end bucket in it, stick your hand in there, and grab a fish. I've heard my grandmother talk about this one gentleman that stuck his hand in the bucket and pulled out a moccasin as a snake. And he just sat there and was frozen. He couldn't speak because we all know that if he had grabbed that moccasin by the tail, what would have happened? What happened, he got him around the neck so he didn't strike him. But just the sheer surprise of catching a snake instead of a fish could leave you speechless. And I think this gentleman was speechless for a while. But that's just some of the stories. Now, my uncle, instead of using the bucket, what he would use, yes, Jesse James, oh my goodness, he would use a pitchfork. I don't know if you ever seen a pitchfork, but you can Google it after this session. And he would just run the pitchfork through the water real quick. And of course, stick the fish, bring it up, and you got a fish on the end. Now, Africans did that move, but they did it with a spear, or what they call a spear that was turned into a fork. It had 3 prongs on the end. So it served the same purpose. So, but you know, living out there for me was, we didn't know any better for the longest. You know, and it's old adage that you don't know you're poor. Well, actually, we did know we was poor. I knew I was poor. It wasn't the fact that I didn't know I was poor. I knew we was poor. But, you know, we went to town every now and then. When I say go to town, that means go to the neighboring cities like Albany and visit relatives. But, you know, we spent the most of our time, just my brother and I, and we wasn't allowed to listen in on grown folks' conversation. I can tell you that right now. That's one thing you didn't do. You know, but you did it, but you didn't do it.
Hey, we thought Walmart was that, we thought Cookville was Walmart. Remember that shit?
Yeah. So it was a small little store that had pretty much everything, had the survival kits for the country. Yeah, I call it. You know, they had everything from smoked meat to Pepsi Cola, peanuts. You know, they had the, you know, survival kit there for us, but, you know, it was no big shopping centers that we could go visit. And, you know, and our parents, sometime the creek would rise and we couldn't even get into town.
Yeah.
You know, because all roads were blocked leading from out there. So we had to wait until the water go down just to get to town. So, but that's the younger days, you know, where you knew yourself that you was poor, but it only came to reality when you went to school. When we became school age, you actually knew, for no uncertain circumstance, that you was poor, because some of the kids going to school was poor like you, but you could tell the one that wasn't as poor as you, because kids will be kids and they taunt you with their riches. If you was, I wouldn't call it riches, but you know, they had a little bit more than we had. And because by our situation was dire straight, because, you know, our mother died, John was only 3, you know, and I was 6. So that put us at a disadvantage of trying to live and not have a mother to nourish us along, because that's one thing that mothers do better than fathers. Yeah. They know how to nurture. And we miss that. Yeah, oh yeah.
No iron the clothes, none of that shit.
Oh, no. So a lot of skills that we learned, the one skill that I learned from my mom, I learned it the hard way. Our neighbor was selling watermelons down on his little place that he raised, and I went down and she gave me a certain amount of money to go down there to make this purchase. So I went down and I made the purchase. I came back and I gave her the change in the watermelon. She said, well, where's the rest of it? I said, well, this is all I got back. She said, well, did you count it? I said, no, I didn't. And, you know, I paid for that. And what she was teaching me in that sense is that people will take advantage of you. I learned that in my later life, that people will take advantage of you in life. So you have to be ready for that. Now, Wanda always get on me now because Wanda's a stickler about making sure that she get a right change. I am I have the
I know
belief
that, right?
that I have the belief that you're gonna win some in life and you're gonna lose some in life. But at the end of the day, it's gonna equal out. Now, one thing I gotta mention though is that nobody, and I mean nobody that I heard in the distance thought we would survive, my brother and I. And that just don't go for the neighbors that was 5 miles away. That goes for relatives. You know, my grandmother, which is on my
On your
mother's side,
mama's side, right?
yeah. Now she had, in her defense, sort of, she had a lot of kids that she was taking care of from my mother's brothers that had kids. They would own her, but I overheard her at my after my mother's funeral when the family was getting together, saying, "Oh my goodness, I really don't want to take care of two bad boys. I don't have time and not even a place for that." So that's kind of hurt me at the time. But, you know, looking back at it now, I can forgive her for that. But I'm telling you, that stuck with me for a long time. And I think that just getting older is the only reason that I soften up on that. But
Hey man, hey man, you know what? If she would have took us instead of our dead mother taking us, we would have been city boys.
yeah, we would have been city boys. But there's a note that I want to talk about that a little bit later on. Okay. One of the things that I want to mention, and there again, that's been some bad and some good. But the one thing that I want to really get out though is that yes, we was poor, but I'm telling you, we experienced stuff that kids these days would never experience. We had 3 or 4 different pears trees that we could go to at any time and eat pears during the season. We had blackberries. We had dates, and that's something that you probably have never ate a date that wasn't pruned up, and but these was ripe dates on the tree. I mean, it's a good laxative. It works. But that was nice. That was nice. And we had mayhaw type trees that that is a tree that had a red berry that was in water. The tree was primarily grow in water, so you can go, it falls and pretty much like you harvest it, like just like you harvest oh goodness, no, there's another berry that you do. It's not raspberry, cranberry. Cranberries are grown in water. And this mayhaw tree, look it up sometime and see what it's all about. But it's something that we had. So we had the fruits of the earth at our disposal, but we didn't necessarily have the people that we could see. When school is out for us. It was just me and my brother. So it wasn't, you know, a lot of going down the street and playing with the neighbors. It wasn't that kind of show, because a lot of the neighbors was kids, was adults, young adults, and older parents. And, you know, some of them got along with our family, some of them didn't. I don't know the reason to this day why it didn't happen, but, you know, it's just the way it is.
We didn't stay too close to nobody.
Oh, yes, right. You didn't have time to. Well, adults got together, but the kids, as a kid, you had to stay close to home because you didn't want to be caught out after dark doing too much. So that is a small summary of it. I would like to continue this, but I don't want to take all the time doing the only descent of the conversation here, talking about, you know, how growing up in the country and how that whole piece, because our lives is span a lot further than that now. We have got out there and made something of ourselves a lot more than anyone ever gave us credit. You know, my grandmother was tough. She was a tough little lady, you know. Don't let her son fool you for 1 minute. She had a toughness about her that was out of this world, and she let loose on me full force. But it's one thing that little lady did to me. I went back out years later after I had my kids, and we walked from our house to the mailbox, which I guess is a solid mile, if you would try and gauge the distance.
And that was a short mailbox location.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But she told me, she said, "Frank, I was very hard on you, but you came back." And, you know, to this day, I think about that, her saying that, because
I never heard this before, man.
no, you haven't. But you know, in that walk up to that mailbox, she did. That was her way of apologizing, and that's about much as you're gonna get out of that generation. You know,
Yeah,
my father never told he loved me. He told me that he
right.
loved me. My grandmother never told me that she loved me. My mom had though, you know,
Right.
but that's my mom. She didn't live long enough to kind of like fulfill.
25 years old, I think.
25
Something like
years
that.
old, man. 20 last words she said that I heard was that she will love to see the sun shine again. And believe it or not, before they put her in the hospital that evening, the sun came up. But that is a tough story to tell sometimes, but it's a true story to tell. And ooh, that's kind of tough. So let's move on to the next phase.
Sorry, Uncle Frank, that'll have to wait. But thank you, participants, and thank you, viewers. Remember, if you want to contact me about the show, email me at thegeorgianhistorian@gmail.com. The links are in the description box below, along with all the other ones that you can find me on. And I'll see you next time on The Hunt.